These videos deal with a particular time in Northern Ireland's recent history, referred to here as Northern Ireland's 1968. The term 1968 has come to represent a broader period when a wave of revolt swept the globe from the late 1960s to the early 1970s. From the USA to China, similar protest movements emerged. In each country, including Northern Ireland, the drive for change may have expressed itself in different ways, but the overarching demand was for widespread change.
There was this sense, of course, of change internationally, American civil rights movement, the May events in France in 1968. All these things seemed to see students, young people, trying to push society in a left-wing direction, not in a more nationalist direction, but in a more left-wing or radical direction.
Well, of course, the great man in America and the African American scene was Martin Luther King, and that undoubtedly had a major influence on our movement. For example, we used to sing "We Shall Overcome," which is the anthem used in America, and all the civil rights songs, we used to sing all those as we marched along. So all of that was of major significance in those days.
The civil rights movement in America, most definitely, and the students' movements right throughout the world, because there's a world trend, and there was obviously a follow-through and a copy of that here as far as our province in Northern Ireland was concerned, and of course it was used, it had its motive there, and people later followed that through. I believed it was an obvious, imminent challenge because obviously there'll be issues involved with which certainly unionists could not agree, and would be of great concern to unionists, as indeed it turned out to be. So we had then, as you're aware, the civil rights movement that seriously, and I mean seriously, set in motion steps designed to destabilise the Northern Ireland state and constitution, and to unnerve the Stormont regime.
Well, I think at first the Vietnam War was the big issue. That sort of divided you into whether you were pro or anti-American on the issue of the war. Then the events in Europe were certainly impacting on students. And that may have resulted in the student upsurge of support for the civil rights movement after the events on the 5th of October in Derry.
The Vietnam thing, we went on all the Vietnam protests down at the City Hall. Joan Baez coming over and singing at the concert. We climbed over the wall and got in there to, I think it was the Ulster Hall. Very involved in the whole Vietnam issue. Donovan, all of the folk singers, peace movements, Martin Luther King, all of that, very interested in and involved in all that. We would all have been very involved in international and thinking about international events, in particular the American Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King, all of the issues. I remember even the whole issue around Israel and Nasser, all of the world events that were just, we didn't have a television because my father didn't believe in television. He said it was America's way of brainwashing the world. How right he turned out to be. But my aunt across the street had a TV, as in a whole lot of streets, 1 or 2 houses have a TV. So we'd run up to see the news and hear what was happening, all about the world and the international situation. And yes, we were very engaged with those issues.
I mean, I remember one of my colleagues in the civil rights movement was christened Danny the Red, because, you know, the television screens were full every night of the upsurge of student and worker protest in France. It was a period of upheaval and unrest, disquiet, almost everywhere. You see, it was television that changed everything. Television changed everything. The fact that You weren't listening to the radio to hear about presidential contests. You were looking at Jack Kennedy and Richard Nixon. You were looking at LBJ and all of those prominent American politicians. You were looking at who was in office in Britain at the time. Alec Douglas Hume, Harold Wilson, all these people.